been here long enough. I deserve to be on camera. Yeah, that's what I'll tell them. Alright, Sonic fans, now that the Archie Comics franchise has come to a close, I wanted to look into how its downfall actually came about. I'm talking the reboots, the lost characters, and how one writer's lawsuit set the Sonic Archie Comics on the path to destruction. I'm Jocelyn the intern, I do all the research nobody else wants to, straight from the desk of Death Battle! Live action. Hey, the closet's all I got, okay? At least you can't smell it! Now, before we go too far down the legal rabbit hole, let me intro you to comic writer and illustrator Ken Penders. Ken has worked on stories for Marvel, DC, Image, and Disney, but most notably, Ken worked with Archie Comics on their Sonic series. Ken started working on Sonic the Hedgehog issue number 11 and would go on to write for nearly 100 issues of various Sonic and Knuckles storylines. He was pretty important to the universe and its stories, and is the guy responsible for the Knuckles is a Green God arc that we covered in a recent Desk Of episode. Ken is even the brainchild behind the Knuckles family tree and its absurd flurry of ancestors, along with hundreds of other Mobians like Scourge the Hedgehog and Jeffrey the Skunk, to name a few. You may have noticed that these characters suddenly disappeared in the middle of some important storylines. So what happened? While the specifics are vague due to the terms of Ken's legal resolution, we do know his last credited contribution to Archie Comics was in 2006, around Sonic the Hedgehog issue 169, after which Ken disappeared into the void of everyday life to quietly plot his return to the forefront of comics. Then, after years of being off the grid, Ken returned in 2009 to take back his characters from Sega and Archie Comics, filing a lawsuit with the USPTO. This included the omniscient Enerjack, Sonic's weird robot parents, and most of the Dark Legion like Knuckles' love interest, Lara-su. Ultimately, the government sided with Ken, granting him copyright and empowering him to use any legal means deemed necessary to protect and preserve his IP. And thus the shadow war behind the Sonic Archie universe began to take shape. Despite the following suits and countersuits between the two, Ken followed up his legal victory with the reveal that his characters would find new life in a graphic novel that Ken Penders would pen himself. Frankly, Archie Comics wasn't down with this idea, and based on everything happening, they filed a cease and desist. Fast forward a few years and things really began heating up. Penders started another lawsuit, this time against Sega and EA Games for allegedly infringing his rights in the video game Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood. It ended in a stalemate, but it likely caused a number of revisions to the storylines in the comics. And the fans were pissed! Here we are about to see the Grand Master of the Dark Legion take on Knuckles' mom to decide the fate of the Echidna race, while Jeffrey the Skunk is on the other side of the planet staging a massive coup to take over the last free kingdom, and then suddenly, poof! A big purple Tasmanian devil named Thrash shows up and sends them all through a warp ring to what I like to call the Penders Dumpster Dimension. The problem was, Ken's contributions to the Sonic universe were so massive that instead of trying to tiptoe around the holes, they said screw it, and rebooted the whole universe. And now, thanks to Mega Man, all trace of Ken Penders and his characters were gone for good. That means no more superpowered fire ants, no more romance between distant cousins, and almost no trace of the Echidna race. Plus, long-standing characters in the Sonic universe like Rob-O the Hedge and Mary Ann were replaced with Bow Sparrow and Thorn the Lop. Okay, now you may be saying, Ken, buddy, how could you do this? Well, in his defense, he and only he has publicly stated that Archie Comics could use some of his characters if they adhere to certain guidelines. Like officially making the Mobius 20 years later timeline canon, or requiring all lara-su content to first be approved by Ken before print. But to this day, Archie Comics won't discuss the case, and has decided that it's best to move on. Until the series died 3 years later. Good old Ken Buddy, on the other hand, hasn't given up. Remember how in 2009, Pender said he was bringing lara-su into her own universe? Well, I guess that's still the plan. But here we are 9 years later, and I can't find anything. There's a bunch of promotional art, a couple teased pages, a mobile app announcement, and he still posts about it on Twitter. But to this day, nothing's been published. And can I take a moment to talk about the new art for some of these characters? It's changed drastically. Look, I don't want to be too critical of the guy, so we'll just let the lara-su Chronicles wiki speak for itself. Fun fact, Ken would like everyone to know that his characters are no longer echidnas. They are now echidnia, which are aliens. Echidnia? Echidnia. I don't know. Oh, and don't tell Wiz and Boomstick that I borrowed a camera. They weren't even using it, okay? Although there were some weird files on the memory card that I definitely didn't copy into a folder deep in the bowels of my hard drive labeled Future Blackmail. Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep this. Uh-oh.